The massive council chamber stretched out like a cathedral of stars, its walls made of living crystal that pulsed with alien light. Ambassador Kim Hana walked slowly across the polished floor, her footsteps echoing in the enormous space. Around her, hundreds of alien beings watched from their floating platforms and twisted chairs, their strange forms casting weird shadows in the dim light. Hana had been Earth's voice for 3 years now, traveling from one alien world to another, speaking for humanity in rooms where humans were barely considered worthy of notice. Today felt different, though. Today she carried more than just words. The Valthari delegates dominated the center of the chamber, their crystal-like bodies reflecting the room's light in sharp, cutting beams. They looked like living diamonds, beautiful but cold, with 4 eyes that never seemed to blink. Their leader, High Counselor Thexval, sat on a throne that seemed to grow from the floor itself, his massive form towering over everyone else. To her left, the Nexari floated in their strange gas-filled suits, their actual bodies nothing more than colored mist that swirled and changed shape inside transparent containers. They had no faces, as humans understood them, but somehow their movements felt mocking, dismissive. Hana had studied these beings for years, learned their languages, understood their customs. She knew that the Valthari believed strength came only from crystal and stone, that anything soft was weak. She knew the Nexari thought solid beings were primitive, locked into one shape forever. And she knew that both species saw humans as nothing more than useful animals. "Honored Council," Hana began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "I stand before you today not as a beggar, but as the representative of 4 billion human souls scattered across this galaxy." A ripple of what might have been laughter passed through the alien delegates. The sound was horrible, like breaking glass mixed with escaping gas. "For 10 years, Hana continued, ignoring the sounds, "human colonies have been raided. Our people have been taken from their homes, their families, their lives. They work in your mines, your factories, your dangerous facilities where you won't risk your own lives." She turned slowly, making eye contact with as many alien beings as possible. Some looked away, others stared back, with what seemed like amusement. "We have asked politely for this to stop. We have offered trade agreements, cultural exchanges, technological cooperation. We have begged for basic recognition of human rights. And what have we received in return?" High Counselor Thexval's mandibles clicked together in what Hana had learned was the Valthari equivalent of a chuckle. "You have received exactly what your species deserves, little human. You are soft, weak, short-lived creatures with no real technology, no real power. You exist to serve those stronger than you." The chamber erupted in various alien sounds of agreement. The Nexari swirled faster in their containers, creating small whirlwinds of colored gas. Other species Hana barely recognized made clicking, buzzing, and whistling sounds that all seemed to carry the same message. Humans were nothing. "This is humanity's final diplomatic warning," Hana said, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. The chamber fell quiet, not because they respected her words, but because they were curious about what the little human thought she could threaten them with. "Release our colonists immediately. End the slave trade of human civilians. Respect our territorial boundaries and recognize humanity's right to exist as equals in this galaxy." The silence lasted for exactly 3 seconds. Then High Counselor Thexval began to laugh, a sound like crystal bells being shattered. The laughter spread through the chamber like a virus, growing louder and more mocking with each passing moment. "Little human," Thexval said, when he finally stopped laughing, "your species contributes nothing but manual labor to this galaxy. You have no fleet worth mentioning, no weapons that could threaten a single one of our ships, no power and certainly no voice here. You are insects pretending to be eagles." He leaned forward on his crystal throne, his 4 eyes focusing on Hana, like laser beams. "Go back to your little blue world and tell your leaders that the galaxy has spoken. Humans will continue to serve, because that is all you are good for." The alien laughter grew even louder. Some delegates were making gestures that needed no translation, their meaning clear in any language. Hana stood perfectly still in the center of it all, her face showing no emotion, her hands steady at her sides. She reached slowly for the communicator on her belt, a simple device that looked primitive compared to the advanced technology surrounding her. The aliens paid no attention to it, assuming it was just another piece of crude human equipment. "Earth control," she said quietly, her words barely audible over the continuing laughter. "This is Ambassador Kim. The Galactic Council has given their final answer." She paused, looking one last time at the faces and forms around her, memorizing each species, each delegate, each mocking expression. "Diplomacy has failed. Execute Silent Thunder Protocol." The laughter continued as Hannah walked calmly toward the exit. Behind her, High Counselor Thexville called out mockingly, "Run along, little human, and remember to tell your people that this is how the galaxy works. The strong rule, the weak serve." As her shuttle lifted off from the station, Hannah could see, through the windows, that the celebration was still going on inside the council chamber. The aliens were congratulating themselves, sharing what passed for drinks among their various species, convinced that they had just put another primitive species in its place. They had no idea that they had just signed their own death warrant. For years they had ignored humanity's warnings, dismissed their pleas, laughed at their attempts at diplomacy. Now, finally, they would learn that sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one that looks harmless until it's too late. As her shuttle entered hyperspace, heading back toward Earth, Hannah allowed herself a small smile. The real war was about to begin. The bridge of the soul's vengeance hummed with quiet energy, its sleek black surfaces absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Captain Lee Minho stood in the center of the command deck, watching dozens of holographic displays that showed star maps, ship positions, and tactical data streaming in from across the galaxy. The ship itself was a marvel that shouldn't have existed, at least not according to what the aliens believed about human technology. Minho had been waiting for this moment for 15 years, ever since he'd graduated from the secret naval academy, hidden in the asteroid belt beyond Pluto. Back then, he was just another young officer assigned to what the public thought was a simple mining operation. The truth was far more complex and far more dangerous. Around him, his carefully chosen crew worked with the precision of a Swiss watch. These weren't ordinary naval officers. Each one had been selected not just for their skills, but for their ability to keep secrets that could change the fate of humanity. Commander Yun Sora, his second-in-command, had spent 5 years working undercover as a cargo ship pilot, mapping alien patrol routes and fleet positions. Lieutenant Song Nari had been raised on Mars colony specifically for this mission, learning alien languages and customs from childhood. "Status report on the Outer Rim fleets," Minho called out, his voice carrying easily through the bridge's advanced acoustics. "Admiral Kang's 7th Fleet is holding position in the shadow of the Kepler Nebula," reported Commander Yun Sora, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls. 68 ships, all running silent. The aliens' long-range sensors are reading the area as empty space. Minho allowed himself a small smile. The stealth technology had been humanity's greatest breakthrough, reverse-engineered from a Nexari scout ship that had crashed on Luna 12 years ago. The aliens had searched for their missing vessel for months, never knowing it was sitting in a hidden hangar beneath the moon's surface, being taken apart piece by piece by Earth's best scientists. "What about Admiral Kim's forces?" he asked. Lieutenant Park Jisoo looked up from her station, her young face serious with concentration. 4th Fleet reports all systems green from Sector 12. They've been watching the Valthari Home Defense Fleet for 3 days now. The Crystal Heads have no idea they're being observed. It was almost funny in a dark way. For 20 years, the aliens had watched human ships coming and going throughout the galaxy, seeing exactly what they expected to see: crude cargo haulers, simple mining, vessels, outdated passenger transports. What they hadn't realized was that every single one of those ships was gathering intelligence, mapping their defenses, studying their tactics, and learning their weaknesses. The real human fleet had been built in complete secrecy, hidden in asteroid fields, gas giant atmospheres, and the dark spaces between stars where no alien patrol ever ventured. While the galaxy's powers grew comfortable and lazy, convinced of their superiority, humanity had been preparing for war. "Sir," Lieutenant An Junho called from the communications station, "we're receiving confirmation signals from our deep cover. Agents. Agent Cho Minsu reports from the Valthari capital that their defense fleet is operating on a reduced schedule. Agent Bei Ji-won confirms the Nexari trade routes are following predictable patterns. Minho nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and sadness. Those agents had volunteered for missions that meant they might never see Earth again. They had spent years, sometimes decades, living among the aliens who enslaved their people, watching and waiting for this moment. Some had even started families in alien space, creating the perfect cover for their real purpose. The hardest part had been the waiting. Every day that passed meant more humans were taken as slaves, more colonies were raided, more families were torn apart. The temptation to act early, to strike before they were fully ready, had been almost overwhelming. But Earth's leaders had known that humanity would only get one chance. If they failed, if they revealed their true capabilities without achieving total victory, the aliens would crush them completely. "Commander Yoon," Minho said, "show me the tactical display for the junction points." The main hologram shifted, showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, with bright red dots marking the major hyperspace junctions that connected different star systems. These choke points were the key to galactic commerce and military movement. "Control them, and you controlled everything. All 37 primary junctions are covered," Commander Yoon reported. "We have hunter-killer groups positioned at each one, along with the special packages our engineering teams have been deploying for the past 2 years. Those special packages were humanity's secret weapon, a combination of human innovation and alien technology that would soon change everything. Disguised as space debris or hidden inside what appeared to be dead asteroids, they had been quietly placed at every major travel route in the galaxy. When activated, they would turn the aliens' own transportation network into a trap." Lieutenant Song Nari looked up from her station, her expression tense. "Captain, we're detecting increased alien patrol activity in Sectors 4 and 9. It looks like they're starting to notice the unusual quiet from human space. For the past month, human civilian traffic had been gradually disappearing from alien-controlled space. Merchant ships had been recalled to Earth, colonists had been quietly evacuated from exposed settlements, and diplomatic personnel had found reasons to return home. To the aliens, it probably looked like humanity was sulking after the failed diplomatic mission, withdrawing into their own small corner of the galaxy. They had no idea it was the calm before the storm. "Let them wonder," Minho said. "In fact, their curiosity will work in our favor. The more ships they send to investigate, the more targets we'll have when the trap springs." He turned to address the entire bridge crew, his voice carrying the weight of 20 years of preparation and the hopes of billions of humans throughout the galaxy. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to make history. For 2 decades we have prepared, planned, and positioned ourselves for this moment. Our people have suffered, our colonies have been raided, and our diplomats have been laughed at. But every insult, every act of cruelty, every moment of alien arrogance has brought us to this point." The bridge fell completely silent. Every officer focused on their captain's words. "Begin Phase 1, Minho commanded. All ships maintain stealth protocols, communications blackout except for emergency channels. Let the aliens think we've simply vanished into our little corner of space." As his orders were transmitted across the hidden fleet, Minho felt the weight of history settling on his shoulders. Somewhere out there, alien commanders were probably chuckling about the humans' apparent retreat. They were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one you never see coming. The war hadn't started yet, but humanity's greatest gamble was now in motion. The command bridge of the Incheon's Fury was a masterpiece of human engineering that the aliens had never imagined possible. Admiral Kim Sun-woo stood at the center of the circular bridge, surrounded by holographic displays that showed the real-time status of every human fleet across the galaxy. The massive dreadnought itself was over 2 kilometers long, its hull covered in stealth plating that made it invisible to alien sensors. Sun-woo had been preparing for this day since he was a young lieutenant, watching helplessly as alien raiders took his sister from their mining colony 30 years ago. He never saw her again, but her memory had driven him through decades of secret training, careful planning, and patient waiting. Today, that patience would finally pay off. The tactical display in front of him looked like a three-dimensional chess board with green dots representing human forces and red dots showing alien fleets. As he watched, red dots began disappearing one by one, winking out of existence with no warning, no distress calls, no trace left behind. "Admiral," Captain Han Yojin called from her station, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were witnessing. "Valthari 3rd Fleet has been eliminated at Junction 7 Alpha. 17 ships destroyed in under 4 minutes. Captain Lee's hunter-killer group reports no enemy survivors and no witnesses." Sun Wu nodded grimly. The Valthari 3rd Fleet had been one of their most arrogant units, the same group that had raided the Tau Ceti colonies just 6 months ago. They had swept in like they owned the universe, taken 3,000 human civilians, and left behind nothing but burning settlements. Now they were space dust. "Nexari Command Station at Kepler 442 has gone dark," reported Commander Lim Tae-hyun from the communications array. "Our stealth mines activated perfectly. The station's shields never even had time to power up." The stealth mines had been one of humanity's most ambitious projects. For over 3 years, disguised human cargo ships had been dropping them at strategic locations throughout alien space. They looked like ordinary asteroids or space debris, completely invisible to alien scanners. But each one contained enough firepower to destroy a battleship, waiting patiently for the activation signal that had finally come. Lieutenant Bae So-young looked up from her sensor station, her eyes bright with excitement. "Sir, we're getting reports from across the galaxy. The Hegemony patrol base at Ross 248 just went offline. Admiral Park's forces caught a Nexari supply convoy completely by surprise near the Horsehead Nebula, and Commander O reports that the Halian listening post in the Centauri system has been neutralized. It was working perfectly. For 25 years, human intelligence agents had mapped every alien military installation, every patrol route, every supply line. They had worked as janitors in alien command centers, as mechanics on alien warships, as translators in alien government buildings. They had been invisible, dismissed as harmless human laborers, all while gathering the information that was now being used to destroy their former masters. The aliens had made a critical mistake. They had become so convinced of their own superiority that they stopped paying attention to the humans working among them. They never imagined that the quiet human cleaning their floors might be memorizing their security codes, or that the human repairing their ships might be learning their tactical procedures. "Admiral," Lieutenant Kim Jae-wan called from the long-range communication station, "we're intercepting alien emergency transmissions. They're starting to realize something is wrong, but they have no idea what's happening." Sun Wu allowed himself a cold smile. The aliens were finally beginning to understand that they were under attack, but they still didn't know who was attacking them or how. Their sensors showed nothing but empty space where their fleets used to be. Their communication networks were being systematically jammed. Their supply lines were disappearing without explanation. "Status on Phase 2, Sun Wu ordered. "Captain," Han checked her displays. "All junction points are now under our control. The enemy can't move between star systems without our permission. Their main battle fleets are trapped in their home systems, completely cut off from each other." This had been the key to the entire plan. The galaxy was connected by hyperspace junctions that allowed faster-than-light travel between star systems. Control those junctions, and you controlled everything. For years, human engineers had been secretly placing weapons platforms at every major junction, disguised as space debris, or hidden inside hollowed-out asteroids. When the signal came, those platforms had activated simultaneously across the galaxy, creating an invisible net that caught every alien fleet trying to respond to the crisis. Ships that tried to jump to hyperspace found themselves destroyed before they could escape. Messages that tried to get through were intercepted and blocked. "Sir," Commander Yoon Ji-hoon reported from his station, "we're detecting massive alien fleet movements in their home systems. It looks like they're trying to organize some kind of response." "Let them try," Sun Wu said. "They're fighting an enemy they can't see, using tactics against an opponent who knows their every move. They trained their entire military to fight other aliens who follow the same rules they do. They never prepared to fight humans." The truth was, humans had learned to fight dirty. While the aliens had spent centuries perfecting formal battle tactics and honorable combat, humans had studied guerrilla warfare, stealth operations, and psychological warfare. They had learned from every conflict in human history, from ancient battles to modern special operations. Lieutenant Song Mina looked up from her station, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "Admiral, we're receiving a priority message from Captain Park Seojin's infiltration team. They've taken control of the Valthari communication array on their capital world. They're requesting permission to broadcast our message." This was the moment Sunwoo had been waiting for. For decades, the aliens had ignored humanity's diplomatic warnings, laughed at their peaceful requests, dismissed their attempts at negotiation. Now it was time for a different kind of message. "Open a channel to the entire galaxy," Sunwoo ordered. "All frequencies, all languages, maximum power." The bridge fell silent as the communication system powered up. Across the galaxy, every alien receiver would pick up the signal, from the smallest personal communicator to the largest military broadcast array. "This is Admiral Kim Sunwoo of the Human Defense Force," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the communication system. "For 30 years, humanity has asked for peace. For 30 years, you have responded with slavery, raiding, and mockery. For 30 years, you have treated us as animals to be bought and sold." He paused, looking around at his crew, seeing his own determination reflected in their faces. "You ignored our warnings. You dismissed our diplomats. You laughed at our requests. For basic dignity and respect, you believed that humans were weak, primitive, and helpless." Another pause, letting the weight of his words sink in across the galaxy. "You were wrong. Today your fleets burn in the void. Your supply lines are cut. Your communication networks are compromised. Your military installations are destroyed. This is not conquest. This is justice." The message continued broadcasting on all frequencies, reaching every corner of alien space. On 1,000 worlds, alien leaders were finally beginning to understand that the humans they had dismissed as harmless laborers had just destroyed their entire military structure in a single coordinated strike. The galaxy would never be the same again. The crystal walls of High Counselor Thexval's flagship bridge were cracking under stress, hairline fractures spreading like spider webs as the massive Valthari leader stared in disbelief at his tactical displays. The crystalline dominance had been the pride of the Valthari fleet for over 2 centuries, a ship so powerful that entire star systems had surrendered at the mere sight of it approaching their worlds. Now it sat helpless in space, surrounded by sleek black vessels that seemed to absorb light itself. The human ships moved with a grace that defied everything Thexval thought he knew about primitive Earth technology. They flowed around his flagship like water, their formation perfect, their weapons trained on every vital system of his mighty warship. "This cannot be happening," Thexval muttered, his 4 eyes darting between the tactical screens. Just hours ago, he had been celebrating humanity's pathetic diplomatic failure with his fellow council members. They had shared crystalline wine and laughed about the foolish little humans who thought they could threaten the established powers of the galaxy. His tactical officer, a younger Valthari named Kexmore, stood frozen at his station, his crystalline fingers hovering over controls that seemed suddenly useless. "High Counselor," he said, his voice cracking like breaking glass, "our sensors are detecting human vessels at every major installation in Valthari space. The Home Defense Fleet. Sir, they're not responding to our calls." Thexval's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. "What do you mean they're not responding? The Home Defense Fleet has over 300 ships." "Sir," Kexmore said, his voice barely above a whisper, I think they're gone, all of them. The massive council chamber where Thexval had mocked Ambassador Kim Hana just days ago was now under human control. The crystal spires that had housed the galaxy's most powerful leaders were dark and silent. The mighty fleets that had enforced alien rule for thousands of years had been swept away like dust in a solar wind. Across the bridge, communication stations sparked and flickered as desperate messages poured in from across Valthari space. Colony. Governors pleaded for help that would never come. Military commanders reported human ships appearing out of nowhere, demanding surrender. Trade stations sent panicked signals about their protective fleets simply vanishing without a trace. How? Many ships do the humans have? Thexval demanded, his voice rising to a shriek that made the crystal walls ring like bells. We don't know, sir, stammered another officer. Our intelligence report said they had maybe 50 ships total, all of them primitive cargo haulers and mining vessels. But these ships, he gestured helplessly at the tactical display, these ships are more advanced than anything we've ever built. The main view screen flickered to life, showing the interior of what was clearly a human command bridge. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. Where Valthari ships were all crystal and sharp angles, reflecting light in brilliant displays of alien beauty, the human bridge was dark and functional, every surface designed for efficiency rather. Then Show Admiral Jang Hyok stood in the center of the human bridge, his uniform simple but perfectly pressed, his stance relaxed but commanding. Behind him, Colonel Park Minji and Captain Oh Seung-hwan flanked him like silent guardians, their faces showing no emotion except cold determination. Thexval had studied human faces during his years of dealing with their diplomats and slaves. He had learned to read their expressions, to see their fear and desperation when they begged for mercy for their people. But these faces showed something he had never seen before in humans: absolute confidence and controlled fury. High Counselor. Thexval, Admiral Jang said, his voice carrying easily across the communication link. His pronunciation of the Valthari name was perfect, showing a level of preparation that sent chills through the alien leader's crystalline spine. We meet again, though under different circumstances than your council chamber. This is impossible. Thexval sputtered, his mandibles clicking so rapidly they sounded like machine gun fire. Humans don't have this technology. You're primitive. You have no fleet, no weapons, no power in this galaxy. Admiral Jang's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his dark eyes. You called us primitive in your grand chamber. You enslaved our people and sold them like animals. You laughed at our warnings and dismissed our pleas for basic dignity. The human admiral paused, letting his words sink in. Around him, his officers worked at their stations with quiet efficiency, monitoring what was clearly a galaxy-wide operation. You made a critical error, High Counselor. You assumed that because we appeared weak, we actually were weak. You thought that because we worked quietly, we weren't planning. You believed that because we asked nicely, we had no other options. On his tactical display, Thexval could see more human ships appearing, their stealth systems disengaging now, that they no longer needed to hide. There were hundreds of them, sleek predators that moved through space with deadly purpose. Each one was more advanced than anything in the Valthari fleet, armed with weapons that defied alien understanding of human capabilities. Where did these ships come from? Thexval demanded, his voice cracking with desperation. Our intelligence monitored your shipyards. We watched your colonies. You had nothing. Colonel Park Minji stepped forward slightly, her voice carrying a hint of what might have been amusement. Your intelligence watched exactly what we wanted you to see. While you were counting our cargo ships and mining vessels, we were building our real fleet in places you never thought to look. Captain Oh Seung-hwan added, every human who worked in your shipyards, your government buildings, your military bases, they were all gathering information. For 25 years we mapped your defenses, studied your tactics and learned your weaknesses. You treated us like invisible servants, never imagining that we might be intelligent enough to plan our own liberation. The crystalline dominance shuddered as targeting lasers from dozens of human ships locked onto its hull. Warning alarms began blaring throughout the bridge, their crystal chimes now sounding like funeral bells. Humanity remembers everything. High Counselor, Admiral Jang continued, his voice growing harder with each word. Every colony raid, every family separated, every human sold in your slave markets, every time you laughed at our diplomatic attempts, we remember all of it. Thexval's 4 eyes darted around his bridge, looking for options that didn't exist. His weapons were offline, disabled by some kind of human technology he didn't understand. His engines were dead. His communication systems were being jammed. His mighty flagship was nothing more than a crystal coffin floating in space. What do you want? He finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. Justice, Admiral Jang replied simply. Surrender your vessels immediately. Order all remaining Valthari forces to stand down. Your crimes against humanity will be judged, and your victims will be freed. The Admiral leaned forward slightly, his eyes never leaving Thexval's face. The galaxy has new leadership now, High Counselor, and unlike the old leadership, we believe that all intelligent beings deserve freedom and dignity. As if to emphasize his point, the tactical display showed similar scenes playing out across the galaxy. Nexari gas-form commanders found their command stations surrounded by human ships, other alien species that had participated in the slave trade watched helplessly as their fleets were systematically neutralized. The age of alien dominance was over. Humanity had spoken, not with words this time, but with actions that would reshape the galaxy forever. Thexval stared at the human admiral's face and realized that this was what justice looked like when it finally arrived, after decades of patience. The Great Assembly Hall on New Geneva Station looked nothing like the cold, intimidating chamber where Ambassador Kim Hana had once stood alone, facing the mockery of alien overlords. Gone were the towering crystal spires and floating platforms designed to make humans feel small and insignificant. Instead, the new hall was built with warm materials and natural lighting, with seating arranged in circles rather than hierarchies, where every being could look each other in the eye as equals. Hana walked to the center podium, her steps confident on floors that were no longer polished crystal, but warm wood from Earth's oak trees. Around her sat a mixture of beings that would have been unthinkable just months ago. Former human slaves sitting next to alien diplomats, freed colonists working alongside species who had helped humanity during the dark years. The change was more than just architectural. The very air felt different, charged with hope instead of oppression, filled with the sound of multiple languages being translated in real time, rather than the dismissive laughter she remembered so well. Children played in designated areas nearby, human and alien youngsters who would grow up in a galaxy where their worth wasn't determined by their species' military power. 6 months ago, Hana began, her voice carrying easily through the chamber's acoustics, I stood in a very different room, speaking to very different people about very different hopes for our galaxy's future. She paused, looking around at the faces watching her. There was Kim Minseo, a former mining slave who now served as liaison for freed workers. There was Veltar of the Kethmori, one of the few alien species who had secretly helped human refugees during the worst years. And there was young Park Seohyun, barely 18, who had been born in captivity but would now help design the galaxy's new educational system. Today, I speak not as a desperate ambassador begging for scraps of dignity, but as the representative of a free humanity in a galaxy that is finally learning what justice looks like. Admiral Yang Jiwon stood to address the assembly, her uniform bearing the insignia of the new Galactic Peace Corps rather than the old symbols of war. She had been one of the architects of humanity's great plan, spending 15 years preparing for the moment when diplomacy would fail and action would be required. The final war crimes tribunals concluded yesterday on Lunar Station, she reported, her voice steady and professional. High Counselor Thexval of the former Valthari Empire received a sentence of 50 years in rehabilitation detention, with the possibility of parole after 25 years if he demonstrates genuine understanding of his crimes against sentient beings. The assembly listened in respectful silence. Unlike the old alien councils, there was no cheering or celebration at others' suffering. The new galactic government believed in justice, not revenge. Commander Zexfi of the Nexari Trade Consortium was sentenced to 30 years, with mandatory service in the Refugee Assistance Program. She will spend her detention helping relocate and support the families she once helped tear apart. Yang continued reading from her report, each sentence representing justice for crimes that had gone unpunished for decades. The former slave masters would live, but they would spend their remaining years making amends for their actions, learning to see their victims as people rather than property. All human slaves have been located and freed, Yang announced, and this time the assembly did respond with quiet applause. The final transport arrived yesterday from the Outer Rim territories. Every human who was taken from their family, sold in alien markets, or forced to work against their will has been offered the choice to return home or to start new lives wherever they choose. The number was staggering, over 2 million humans, had been living in various forms of bondage throughout alien space. Now they were free, supported by a galaxy-wide network of assistance programs funded by reparations from their former captors. Captain Shin Hyun-woo, now wearing the civilian clothes of a planetary governor rather than a military uniform, approached the podium. His assignment had been one of the most challenging in the new order, taking control of the former Valthari territories and transforming them from centers of oppression into examples of what the galaxy could become. "The crystal cities of Valthar Prime are being rebuilt," he reported. "The old slave quarters have been demolished and replaced with proper housing for all residents, regardless of species. The former gladiator arenas are now schools and community centers. The execution platforms have become memorial gardens where we remember those who suffered and died under the old system." His voice carried the weight of personal experience. Shin had lost his parents in a Valthari raid when he was 12 years old, spending his teenage years planning for the day when he could return to their world not as a victim, but as a liberator. "Earth offered friendship to the galaxy," he continued, his eyes sweeping across the mixed assembly. "We extended our hands in peace, asked only for basic dignity and respect for our people. The old powers chose dominance instead. We offered negotiation and compromise. They chose exploitation and cruelty." The chamber was absolutely silent now, every being focused on his words. "Today, those who showed mercy to humanity during our darkest hours find themselves as honored partners in our new galactic community. The Keth Mori people, who secretly helped human refugees escape slave markets, now benefit from Earth's most advanced medical technology. The Zeftai, who refused to participate in the slave trade despite economic pressure, are our partners in developing new agricultural techniques for their desert worlds." It was a powerful message. Kindness remembered and rewarded, just as cruelty had been remembered and punished. Ambassador Hana returned to the podium for her closing remarks, looking out at an assembly that represented everything she had hoped for during those lonely years of failed diplomacy. "This galaxy will know peace," she declared, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who had seen impossible dreams become reality. Not the peace of the strong oppressing the weak, but true peace built on equality, respect, and the understanding that every intelligent being has value. She paused, her expression growing more serious. "But let this also serve as a lesson to future generations. Humanity keeps its word, whether that word is a promise of friendship to those who treat us with dignity." Her voice hardened, carrying echoes of the steel that had made victory possible, or a promise of consequences to those who choose the path of cruelty and oppression. As the assembly rose in respectful applause, children's laughter could be heard from the play areas nearby, the sound of a generation that would grow up free in a galaxy where their dreams were limited only by their imagination, not by the prejudices of those who had once considered them less than equals. The age of human leadership had begun, built not on conquest or domination, but on the patient application of justice by a species that had learned never to forget those who showed them kindness, and never to forgive those who showed them cruelty. In the end, the galaxy had learned that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is not the one who threatens you with immediate violence, but the one who watches, remembers, and prepares while you grow comfortable in your arrogance. Humanity had kept its promise, and the stars would never be the same.